GoPro MAX has been my go-to action camera that I've used for the past 3 or 4 years now, and I would say about like a good 80 to 85% of all the ski footage you see in my videos is filmed with this camera right here. Before this, I used the GoPro Fusion, which was the 360 model before the Max, but this has been my go-to camera because it is something I can trust, where I know I will get this shot. A lot of times I don't have a second opportunity to do a run again. 2, I think the quality is great for my YouTube ski vlogs. And 3, stuff like the battery life and things like that, the overall resiliency of this camera has proved to be nothing short of incredible. But in all honesty, if you are just a simple hobbyist or a recreationalist and you buy this camera, it can kind of be difficult and complicated to navigate. So in this video, I want to really share my workflow with the GoPro MAX. This is not going to be totally everything I know, like 100% in depth, but hopefully it should help clarify some things and clear up some confusion when it comes to working with a camera, a 360 camera such as the GoPro MAX. Now, before we delve into the actual editing side of things, if you don't shoot it properly, if you don't have the correct assets into your system, there's only so much we're able to do to get the correct assets out. So before we jump in there, the first thing I want to talk about is where to mount it. I see so many people with GoPros and they mount them at the top of their helmet here, like in the middle of it, or even a little bit closer to the front. But there you don't really get that pure POV perspective. You get a lot of the helmet and just sort of like the sky and the horizon. So for all my GoPro stuff, I mount it right on the front of my helmet here. So again, we don't want it up here. We don't want it in the middle. We really want it right at the front. And then with the Max, typically I will just move it down ever so slightly. It's not really that big of a deal, but typically something like that, you're pretty much good to go with a camera like the 360. Now for the settings that I use, I shoot everything in 360 mode at 5.6K resolution, 24 frames a second. You can also shoot at 30 if you'd rather. The shutter, I usually just keep it at auto. EV comp is anywhere from 0 to -0.5 depending on how bright it is. White balance, I typically keep on auto, or I will lock it at 5500 if it is a bluebird day. ISO min max, I'm usually at 100. Sometimes I'll bump my ISO max up to 400 if it's a little bit lower light and I'm skiing in the trees or something. Sharpness I keep at low. My color is always on flat. The 360 audio is on 360 plus stereo, and the wind is on auto. Very simple when it comes to a setting perspective because, again, we're shooting in 360, which means we're basically filming 180 degrees in both of these lenses and then stitching it together in a program. So the settings are really just meant to ensure that you have your resolution where you want it to be, your color profile where you want it to be. In order for this whole video to make sense, you have to be filming in 360 mode. I don't ever shoot in the hero mode on my GoPro MAX. For this video, in order for this to make sense, you are going to need a few things. First is obviously a GoPro MAX camera. 2, Adobe Premiere Pro, Adobe Media Encoder, GoPro Player, and then the GoPro Reframe plugin for Adobe Premiere. I will be talking about everything as it pertains to Adobe Premiere. This does not apply to other editing softwares like Final Cut Pro or DaVinci Resolve. So really, in order to get the most out of your Max, you really do need to be in Adobe Premiere with the GoPro Reframe plugin. You do have some ability within the GoPro app itself, but everything I'll be referring to is within that host of programs and things like that. So unfortunately, there isn't really a lot of support when it comes to reframe plugins for DaVinci Resolve or Final Cut Pro. So that is why I edit just about everything I shoot in Adobe Premiere. So I think with all that out of the way, let's jump in. I have a few example clips that I'll show you of how we can go from a 360 file to a 4K YouTube watchable format. So to start this off, I'm gonna use a few clips from my CMH trip last week, heli skiing. In here, I just chose a few different 360 files. One is just a head cam that I just showed you. Another one is a pole cam, and another one is a narwhal to kind of give us a little bit of variety here. So when you offload your 360 footage, it's gonna come as this .360 format, and you can see the kind here described as GoPro Max video, but you'll notice if you click on this, it won't really open up in anything that can actually read a 360 format. So in order to do this, you need to download a program called GoPro Player. You can find this right from GoPro. And so now when I set that as my default and I double click on this 360 file, it would automatically open up in GoPro Player. So this is the first step when going through my Max footage of what I need to do. And so now I can scrub through this and I can see the clip. But as I click and drag around the screen, you're gonna notice that it's 360 degrees. So I can see what's in front of me, behind me, above me, below me, there's my skis. But we have to use this program to take it from a 360 format to something that's actually usable. So the first clip I'm gonna do here is a head cam shot. As I use my mouse wheel, I can kind of zoom out a little bit so I can see what I'm looking at. So, okay, this is a clip that I wanna get. I know I'm gonna be skiing some trees here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit this little scissor icon to start my cut. That means it's gonna now trim this as my end point. Scroll over to where I kind of want the clip to end. So I want this whole run here. We'll finish it right here. I hit this scissor point again, and now it shows a 25-second clip. Hit the checkpoint, export trim. And now it's gonna ask me what settings do I want. I click this down arrow here for advanced options. I usually, almost 99% of the time, export everything in 4K H.264 because it's just easier for my computer to manage. When it comes to my head cam stuff, I turn off word lock and horizon level, and I usually turn on mount optimization. I don't believe it really does anything, but I don't think it hurts. So for my POV stuff, I turn off word lock, turn off horizon level, then I hit send to queue. Let's just put this in the folder here. I'll usually make a new folder and call it render so I have them organized. And now rename stuff 01, let's just say max POV clip. And then I hit next. And now you can see it's right here, kind of ready to go. We haven't rendered it out yet, but we are kind of in the queue. So now I'm gonna exit out of this one. I still have GoPro Player open. I'm gonna go back to my original folder. Let's open up this first one here, see what this clip is. So for every clip I shoot, I have to kind of go through this and figure out what is this. Okay, so I can see this is a pole clip. It's one of those shots where the pole kind of disappears. Very fun to add into your stuff, but let's say we want this. Again, I'm gonna kind of pick it up from when I start skiing, hit our arrow. We'll pull this through. Okay, we're kind of done here. So another, space bar, 17-second clip, perfect. Export trim, gonna ask me the same settings. Now for my pole stuff, I keep world lock and horizon leveling on, and you'll kind of see why later on. But for the pole stuff, I keep that stuff on. Send to queue, 02 max pole. Something simple, so when I'm going through. So we're still not done. We have one more clip left. We'll pull up our finder. I think it's this middle one, and this should be our narwhal one. So as I slide around, yes, it is. So cool thing with the narwhal is that you can also get POV with it too. I mean, it takes a little bit more work, but in theory, now I can do a POV shot here. But I want the narwhal, kind of this unicorn looking stuff. So again, we'll start it kind of right before the slash. It doesn't really matter how you have it reframed when you export, so don't really worry about that. We'll pull it through to like here. 19-second clip, perfect. So export trim, 4K with all my narwhal stuff. I turn this stuff off as well. And now 03, what is this called? Max narwhal. Okay. Now we're here, 25 second, 17 second, 19 second. Now I hit start. You can kind of double check all your settings if you want, but hit start, and now we will wait. This shouldn't take very long, but usually I'm exporting out the full clip. So I have everything, the little moments in between, meeting someone at the chairlift or something. So usually this takes a little bit longer, but with my current computer specs, it doesn't take that long. So finished. We should have one more here. And now they're all done. So if I go to Max Tutorial in the renders, now you'll see that they have been transformed. If we open up a new window here, right, they've been transformed from a 360 file to an MP4 file. So now you could open this with something like QuickTime Player, right? Because now it's just an MP4 that you would shoot with your phone or with the GoPro in general, but you'll notice that it's kind of this long, almost equirectangular type of footage because it has both lenses in there. So it's not really a 360 format right now in this MP4 file. So that's why we have to bring it into Premiere and actually use some different tools to reframe it. But now you can see we can at least open it up in something like QuickTime Player. So after that, we're gonna open up Adobe Premiere Pro. I am just gonna make a new project just to keep this simple. GoPro MAX tutorial, create. So first thing I'm gonna do is make a new sequence. This is not an Adobe Premiere Pro tutorial, GoPro MAX, 4K. So now I have my timeline here. I'm gonna pull in this renders file. So now we have all of our clips here. Now you can double click, scroll through them. Now we can watch them, they play back pretty well. But the next step, and arguably the most important step in this whole situation, is creating proxies. It's a little bit easier when I have these small files to work with, but especially if you have a little bit of an older computer or something like that, 360 footage can be very GPU or CPU intensive. So I'm gonna right click everything again. Usually I'll have 20 different Max files. Go down here to proxy, create proxies. And then I have a preset from Abe Kislevitz. I'll link this and try to find where this came from. But I'm basically making a proxy file that's gonna make a substitute file that's a little bit lower quality, a little bit easier for the computer to manage when I'm editing. And then when I export it out, it's gonna pull from the main file. But you'll notice with 360 footage, if you try to do a bunch of reframing on the main file, your computer wants to like overheat and blow up. So when I do that, it automatically opens up this other program called Adobe Media Encoder, and now it's just getting to work right away, and it's creating different proxies, and it'll put them right next to the media where they were created before. So if I come in here to renders, you're gonna notice this proxies file that was automatically created. And now you can see they are about 1/10 of the size of what the original file was. So I do this so I can edit way quicker. It's an extra step in the overall process, but it will save you a ton of time when it actually comes to making a video. So now they're all done. The proxies are complete. So I can hit quit Adobe Media Encoder. So let's just double click on this, pull this into the timeline. It's gonna ask me if keep mismatch, whatever. And you're gonna notice that the quality of it isn't really that good, and that's because we're using proxies. So if you click this little button here, toggle proxies, you're gonna notice it gets a little cleaner, and now we're not pulling from the proxy file. So if you kind of want to see what it is like full quality, you can do that. In order to enable and use the proxies you just created, you want to be able to click on this, and so now we're operating off an easier file to work with. So this is where all of the fun, this is where all of the footage finally gets to life. So after you download the GoPro Reframe plugin, and it gets added to your effects. If you come over here to effects and type in GoPro Reframe, the old one was called FX Reframe. They've updated it to just sort of handle the newer computers a little bit better and just improve the plugin as a whole. So you don't want to use FX Reframe, you want to just use GoPro Reframe. And just to give you guys like an idea, once you understand this and you create like a preset, you can just drag something like Max Headcam. I'll drag this on there and you can see I'm already ready to go. So this is one of the ways I'm able to edit things very quickly, is that I've created presets with these plugins to make this work. For this video, I'll go through this kind of from the beginning to give you guys an idea of how to use this. So as we type in GoPro Reframe, we will drag this onto our clip. And you'll notice that nothing really happens, but now in our effects controls, we see the plugin over here. So first thing you want to do is just choose what your source image is. I edit everything in 4K, so I want to come down here to 3840 by 2160. And now you'll notice that, okay, we start to have something that kind of looks good. We're like, okay, we're getting to a POV shot, right? But it's still not really perfect. I mean, part of the Max is that you can get really wide POV, and so we don't really want this very cropped in shot. So first thing I'm gonna do, if I click on the GoPro Reframe banner up here, it brings up this grid, and I'm gonna actually change the color of this just so it's easier for you guys to see. One of the new things with the updated plugin. But now I have this this cross here, these different lines, and I can control my reframe all from this. So this slider down here, if I just move it back and forth, is my zoom, right? So I can kind of zoom out to get that nice wide POV. I don't really like ever going wider than about like 65-ish, 70. I find that you get a lot of distortion after that. So let's just come in here to like 68. And again, I'm just kind of doing this on the fly just to show you guys kind of the system. So right away, you can see we already have a lot better looking shot. The next thing we can do is come in here to kind of these up and down, this cross here. We can look up and down. We can look all the way up to the sky. We can look down at our skis. I'm just gonna pull it up a little bit more here so I can see, maybe I'll come down. So again, we wanna see our hands, our skis, what's out in front of us, okay? And then if I were to also drag on the letters here. This is pan, right? So now I can go side to side, but we don't really want to mess with that too much for a shot like this. And for the most part, like, you're kind of good right there, you know? I mean, because it's just a simple POV shot, we don't have to do any reframing or keyframing really. In a sense, if this is what you like, you're good to go. You'll notice as you get into trees and stuff, you know, there can be a little bit of warping, like the tree shouldn't really be curved. So you can mess with the lens curve here. The new plugin 100% reframe or lens curve is like an actual GoPro, so linear. So you'll notice how the trees are now upright. They're not really curved anymore, but the problem with that is you get a lot of distortion in your skis. So a little trick that I'll briefly go over, I'm not going to go too in depth with it because it is definitely a little bit more advanced, is something called the second camera in the reframe plugin. If you come in here to advanced controls, you'll notice there's an option here for second camera. Click this down and you're going to basically get a whole nother reframe plugin. Click enable second camera and it's going to bring up this sort of interesting window here. What this is doing is allowing us to reframe another section within the window. So the reason why I'd want to do this is if you'd want to sort of bring back some of the realism in the trees, but then also make it so your hands and skis aren't distorted, you can start to kind of move this around. We want to bring the center of this down, right? Maybe center of it, the radius of it out a little bit more. And then let's say we want to basically undo that lens curve. So now you can see we're just impacting this area. And so let's just say we go like -40 to bring this back a little bit. Maybe we'll add a little bit of softness so it's blended nicely. And if you wanted to, you could even zoom out your hands and stuff a little bit more. Again, you can start to see why this becomes a lot more powerful. And so now if we look at this, we have to clean this up a bit because what it's doing is like where is it? Like right in here, it's starting to impact that. So let's show our divider again. Let's bring this in. Let's just bring the radius of the X in a little bit more. Let's bring the center of the Y down. Then we hit show divider so that gets rid of it. And now you can see we can start to bring back a little bit better looking skis and stuff in there while keeping the trees not like super warped and bended, you know? So second camera is a super powerful tool to use with FX Reframe. You can also add just general, I usually add a little bit of hyper view into it, maybe like 20, just kind of brings the top and bottom down a little bit more too. That I'm pretty happy with. Again, I mean, I have my own preset and settings that I've just refined and really spent time doing, but you can see how quick that took to just sort of go from a 360 shot to something like that. So because we're a little bit wide, I'll have to kind of punch in my scale a little bit. Boom. And now we're good to go. There goes our shot. Next up is the pole cam, right? So this was that footage with this sort of selfie stick type of deal. Same deal, we want to take our GoPro reframe, pull it on our shot, come over here to source image. I'm going to use 4K. If you're shooting 1080, do that. But you'll notice now we're kind of like looking at the mountain. So same thing here. We're going to click on the heading of reframe and I'm just going to drag it and boom. Now I am there. I'm going to zoom out. And you can see like right away, you're pretty much good to go. Now, if you remember with the pole cam, I kept on world lock and all that sort of stuff. What that means is as I move around, you're gonna notice that the camera doesn't move itself. So there's times with this angle where like here, for instance, I'm not really centered if you look on the X here because the camera is kind of told just to stay looking at the same spot. When you disable world lock, it's gonna follow your head or your movement like a traditional camera would or GoPro. So the reason I like doing that is because it makes it really easy to kind of center yourself within this angle. So if we just have this really simple, maybe I'm gonna add a little bit of correction in here so the trees don't look super wonky. But what I'm gonna do now, again, this is not really a total Premiere tutorial. If you enable these little stopwatches here, we're gonna activate what's called animation or keyframes really. And so now by clicking that, you'll see it kind of made these little diamonds and that means it just kind of remembered these settings and created a keyframe. So now as I click on this, because we have proxies enabled that can be really, really easy and smooth, I'm gonna keep myself centered. So you'll notice I just dragged it there, kept those settings. And as I scrub through, like, let's just say, like here, for instance, see how I now come off of the center? I'm just gonna click and drag, move this back on myself, and you'll see how it added a keyframe here. So now what this has done is it's kind of reframed us as we went. So as we can kind of fine tune this a little bit more. Like here, as I do the slash, let's make this here so we stay in the center. So you'll see now I'm staying way more in the center. Now I'm in the center here, okay? Let's keep us in the center here, and you'll see, look how quick it is, right? Because we have those proxies enabled, because we're using the new reframe, again, keep us in the center here, keep us in the center here. Then let's just say we want to, you know, show the view out front. I'll just turn us all the way around. Maybe we'll zoom in a little bit, okay? And now I'll reframe us right into the view like these people here. So now I have all these keyframes, and on just quick like playthrough, you can see the camera actually kind of moving, right? Animation, keyframes. It's a little bit too robotic. It's a little bit too like noticeable. So what you can do, especially here, it's like, whoa, whoa. Let's just highlight everything, shift drag, right click, go to continuous Bezier. That basically is just gonna ease everything in. I mean, it might still be a little bit noticeable, but it's just a little bit less like jarring. Come here, boom. Same thing, let's just punch this in a little bit, and now we're good. Last one here just for this example's sake. I think you guys are starting to understand sort of how this works. Let's use this narwhal footage. The narwhal is always a little bit more interesting to reframe. Let's take our reframe plugin, okay, drag, boom, come over to effects controls, 3840 by 2160. Let's punch this in a little bit. Okay, and now you can see we are just looking at the ground. But because it's 360, we have this beautiful reframe. Look how easy this is. We have our proxies enabled. Turn this over. Let's zoom out. And you're kind of, again, you're like, we're there. You know, this is totally usable. Just fine-tuning stuff. Again, it's usually messing with the distortion of the trees, right? But we can zoom this out. Let's add a little bit of lens sort of curve back in there. Again, you can add the second camera just on you. So as we sort of fix the lens distortion on the trees, we can actually bring it back within us. But as simple as that, we just now have a narwhal shot. And again, as I mentioned, if we wanted like POV, drag this, rotate on the sides here, pull this down, and now look, now I have POV just like that. So the narwhal is a really cool angle because it kind of gives you a lot of versatility. The biggest things you have to worry about with the Max is the distortion. I mean, sometimes you see those clips on Instagram, but like we all know that the trees don't bend like that, right? You don't really want it to show and scream 360 footage, but something like this, just be careful with how much you zoom out and then just play around with the second camera. Oh, I was watching that. That was a good clip. But you can see how I went from narwhal to forward facing just like that. So we had now just took our 3 clips and reframed them. POV, pull, and narwhal. Let's reframe this back to narwhal so we don't have 2 POVs for you guys. Rotate, something like that should be pretty good. Now really the last thing that I would do is something like, you know, coloring. Because we shot in flat color, all of this stuff is going to be a little bit dull. There's a lot more life we can bring back. So if you wanted to, you can uncheck your proxies now that you've done a lot of the keyframing. So now we have our sort of maximum 4K nice sharp image. This isn't a coloring tutorial either, but just very simple things, kind of bringing back all the contrast, right? Using our scopes to kind of see where we're at. Increasing saturation because we shot in that flat color profile. Trying to save the sky here. This is just a tricky dynamic range type of situation, but as we bring the whites down, get a little bit more cloud detail in here, maybe bring our shadows up. You know, we can add the traditional S curve to add some contrast into this guy. Kind of the snow is a little bit tricky. It's always tough to get it like pure white. There's a few methods. You can either take your hue versus saturation picker. It's usually like right in here, some blue. Problem if you pull the blue out is you kind of take the sky out with it, but you can see the snow get a little whiter. So maybe you can kind of pull this down a little bit. Let's just make my suit and stuff a little bit brighter, right? So we'll bring this part up, give us a little bit of oomph. I like using color wheels a little bit, just add a little bit more thickness into our shadows. Maybe we bring up our midtones as well, bring a little bit more brightness in this. Coloring is very, very much creative. You know, you can add a little vignette if you want to give it a little bit more focus. Maybe we increase our exposure a skosh, a little bit more saturation. I like my stuff kind of punchy and bright like you would see on GoPro, but we could literally do as much as change the color of my suit, right? So I can just pinpoint, do I want a pink suit? Pink suit kind of looks cool. Lots of options here. I'm gonna just do a quick luma versus sat, kind of pull down, make sure our bright whites are really white and our dark blacks are really black. So taking all the saturation out, bumping up the middle, and then lastly, because we shot on low sharpness, I'm gonna add about, I don't know, 30% sharpness. And now we took our clip from that, you know, to that. So just gave it a little bit more oomph in there. It looks a little bit better. And now what you could do if you have kind of similar conditions, we could come over here, copy our color, come to this one, paste. So now we're pretty close. Each clip is gonna kind of need its own coloring and vibe to it. Bring our stuff down there. But again, you can see how we just brought this back a little bit. Lumetri color here. Bring into our nice POV shot here. Woo. And now we're good. So after that, you're kind of ready to export the video just like you would normally. But the idea is now we just took a 360 clip, a .360 file, brought it into an H.264 format, took it into Premiere, created proxies, and then used the GoPro Reframe plugin to actually utilize the beauty of 360. So hopefully this was helpful. This wasn't totally in depth. There's a lot more into this. I've spent years and years with the Max, with the Reframe plugin. So the best thing you can do is use it, create presets so you don't have to go through this process every single time, but then you unlock the beauty of 360 footage. So thanks for watching, guys. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this style video. Maybe I'll make some more for like the Hero 13. But take it easy, guys. Happy New Year. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.